Hey guys, it's a 2-in-1 day. Happy Earth Day. This is MedusaWasFramed, and my name is Joyce. And tonight, I'm going to talk about the man who rebuilt Jacksonville, Florida after the Great Fire, or so we're told, Henry John Klutho. Cough, cough. Jacksonville's Lloyd Wright. The Great Jacksonville Fire was in 1901, leaving 10,000 people homeless after destroying 146 city blocks, 2,368 buildings. 2 months after the fire, this fellow was there. And this is a common theme. Hashtag mudflood. So let's put this on slideshow and start talking about Mr. Klutho. In 1901, Jacksonville was the largest city in Florida with 28,000 people. It was a major destination for winter tourists. And yet on May 3rd, 1901, the third largest fire in US history occurred in Jacksonville. It was topped by the 1906 fire and earthquake in San Francisco and the 1871 Chicago fire. Destroyed in this fire was City Hall, the courthouse, the jail, the fire station, the schools, the churches, the orphanages, and many other buildings. It was a blank slate to rebuild. Holy cow, what does that sound like to you? All real estate records that were in the courthouse or city hall were gone, burned. The only real estate documents that survived were those that were in people's homes that they maintained or in bond offices. The first permit to rebuild was filed 1 week later, and it was followed by 1,000 in 6 months. A third of the businesses and half of the homes were rebuilt by fall. Think about that. A third of the businesses and half of the homes were rebuilt by fall in 1901. Then Florida Governor William Jennings declared martial law immediately to start reconstruction. And on May 17th, 2 weeks, 14 days later, the city was returned to civil authority. All business was conducted for real estate in the title and trust companies that still held the real estate documents that survived. And we are told that 5,628 buildings were rebuilt in 18 months. The man hailed as the architect for a new century, Mr. Klutho was born in 1873 in Brescia, Illinois. He went to New York City to study architecture, had a chance to meet Lloyd Wright, and study the prairie style. 2 months after the fire, so in July of 1901, guess who was in Jacksonville? Mr. Klutho. Two months after he got there, he had a contract. What a hustler. He was 28. He had a contract to design the Doll Upchurch building, which opened as the Atlantic National Bank. And he finished it in 1902. Next came the Carnegie Library, which was the main library for 60 years, which he finished in 1905. Then came the Bisbee building, 10 stories, which was done by 1909. This, by the way, was the first skyscraper in Jacksonville, the first reinforced concrete frame high rise in the Southeast. The Morocco Temple, he finished in 1910. It was a Shriners Hall for 74 years, and then it became offices in 1984 and still stands. Next, he built the 7-story YMCA in 1915. And then in 1921, he completed his masterpiece, still considered Jacksonville's most monumental work of art, the St. James Building. It was the tallest building at the time, 75-foot octangular glass dome, open cage elevators, which he is attributed with designing, and extremely abstract terracotta. Between 1995 and 1997, it became City Hall. It takes up a whole block. It's considered a prairie school masterpiece, but at the time, it was built as a big department store. Klutho built his own home and finished it in 1909, where he lived until his 1964 death. There were a number of other apartments that had other names. He finished the Klutho Apartments in 1913, the Osceola Building in 1914, the Love McGinnis House in 1914, which is now a law office, and the Baptist Convention Center in 1924, which stands perhaps to be renovated into some urban mixed use. It's a very large property, so there still remains question. Mr. Klutho was attributed with ruling Jacksonville between 1901 and 1925. And I can find at least 15 buildings that he created in that time. By the close of World War I, there were more prairie buildings in Jacksonville than anywhere else outside of the Midwest. In 1917, he bought his way into the film industry, which from the video that I made about Dixieland, the old trolley park amusement park in Jacksonville, I talked about that and how Jacksonville was the winter southern film capital of the US. He invested heavily in the film industry, built his own studios, which he rented out, and just kept his nose in that business a good bit. There were many factors that caused it to tank, perhaps primarily the politics of the region, which I went into before. In 1907, the mayoral candidate, who was named John Martin, campaigned on getting the film industry and all their vice out of Jacksonville. It apparently was a pretty exciting time for this Baptist conservative population that was growing even more conservative. I read that the studios would resort to pulling fire alarms to get the trucks to come so they could film the trucks traveling down the road as stock footage, and being generally troublesome to set up circumstances like that they could film with a wide variety of actors and actresses, usually actresses, in a wide variety of outfits. Anyway, it didn't go over very well. And Jacksonville wanted them out and got them out. So talkies came and changed everything. But as far as Jacksonville's concerned, the film industry walked away. The stock market crashed, the Depression hit, the Second World War came, and that was that. The film industry in Jacksonville was over. And this man of vision, Klutho, the Frank Lloyd Wright of the South, became a fool. He was considered a fool and condemned for it. The ornateness and abstract work in the terracotta in some of his designs was seen as opulent and unnecessary. In fact, you'll see a slide of a detail of a nymph over a fountain. That's on his home, actually. And that was one of the things that was cited when the conservative movement to get the film industry out of Jacksonville was used as an indication of the vice. So after all of this, he remained in his same home that he had built, and for 4 decades, he rented out the bottom of his home and died penniless at 91 in 1964. Now here's a surprise. Within weeks of his death, all of his drawings and records vanished. Aren't you surprised? 10 years after his death, a neighbor who had known him ended up buying his home when she heard that there was a city's plan to demolish it for a parking lot. Fortunately that she did. Fortunately that she did. And the current owner is a gentleman who has a blog and vlog, Jack's Psych Geo. So interesting. A fan of the house, a fan of the work. Now, Klutho had helped redesign an area in downtown Jacksonville along Hogan's Creek. Between 1929 and 1930, he had a lot to do with the Hogan's Creek Park Improvement Project. His home was in the region. Between 1914, the park actually opened, and in 1922, the pool was built. There had been a park there between 1899 and 1991 was its construction. It was referred to as Springfield Park at that time. It changed names to Hogan Creek Park at one point, and then in 1984, the city named it Klutho Park, he having built some of the structures in there, including a rotunda and bandshell. Interesting tribute, since half of his buildings were destroyed in the same decade of the 80s. Now, why did I bring this up? Well, I, like anyone, appreciates prairie style, and I, like most people, appreciate beautiful architecture. And I, like most people who follow channels like this, know something suspicious when they find it. So how interesting is it that there are all these fires and different kinds of mass destructions and mass movements of people that result in beautiful Moorish architecture. How interesting is that? It was the Chicago fire that gave us Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright. A young nobody with no architectural degree at all is supposed to have created Britain's Crystal Palace. Richard Sonnion complains that the Civil War ended his architectural studies in Paris, and he left without finishing the programs, and yet he designed Boston Trinity Cathedral and the Hamilton Courthouse. William Henry Richardson is responsible for building the Buffalo Central Terminal and many other buildings in Buffalo, New York. The Bowler brothers, attributed to the atmospheric style, built over 100 theaters in the Midwest in the first half of the 1900s. William Strickland, who came out of nowhere, is supposed to have built the Nashville Capitol, the Parthenon that stands on the ground, and several churches in the area. Paul de Morgan and Hugh Denay built a variety of Moorish brick movie theaters in Idaho and Utah between the 18s and 19s. And most ridiculous and suspicious of all is Elmer Fisher, who after the Great Fire in Seattle of 1889 rebuilt half of downtown in 2 years. Huh. Interesting. What does this all have in common? I'll let you decide. But as I'm returning my eyes now to the slideshow, you really think he built that? Come on now, look at that. Come on. That's gone, by the way. That's still there, I believe. I think that one's gone. That one's gone. He didn't build that church, but this is part of the Cathedral Square neighborhood. And I just wanted to include that because it's beautiful. But these are supposed to have been built after the fire too. Not by Klutho, but cough, cough. Look at the one on the left, especially. Look at this. Look at that. Built after the fire. That's still standing. That's one of Klutho's. Beautiful, beautiful prairie style. There's his architectural building sign. Oh, there it is. Oops. Well, I pushed the wrong button. All right. So we'll start right here since I pushed the wrong button. So there he is, the little whippersnapper, that little 28 whippersnapper that came to Jacksonville and hustled his way. Or did he? Did he hustle his way, or was he appointed like all those other people I mentioned, like Edwin Fisher and Richardson and all the rest? Oh, so that's Jacksonville after the fire. So convenient. Remember, it burned down the police station, City Hall, the courthouse. Look at that. Look at that. That's the St. John's River. St. John's River. And if you remember my video on Dixieland, it was right over here on the south bank. Ah, yes. And now, look at that. All those buildings attributed to him. All that lovely Moorish architecture. Prairie style. So this is from the first building that he won the contract for. He was not even around for 3 months, and he already run the contract for that. Yeah, right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. He designed that. Yeah. A 28-year-old little punk. Nope. That's the same building, the dual up church building. Look at that. 6 stories, and look at all that detail on top. All that red brick and concrete. Gosh, so sophisticated. There's some apartments that are still standing that he designed. It's a lovely home, very prairie. St. James Building, that's his masterpiece. It opened as a department store. Look at all that. Look at all that. Terracotta up there. So all of this magnificence that they loved, that he supposedly did, by 1921, they came to see as much too opulent, shamed him for it. There it is. There's the St. James Building. Look at all that. Plasma collectors. You think? The Bisbee Building. That's still there. That's the inside of the Florida Life Building, which, to my reading, is so big and such an undertaking that exactly what is going to come of it is still in consideration. They want to turn it into mixed use urban, right? So condos, apartments, and restaurants and shops, all that good stuff, but it's a lot of work to do there. A lot of work, but you know, it's good that they saved it. Now, again, he didn't design any churches, but I included some photos of the area, not too far away from Cathedral Square. Just look at that. Isn't that interesting? Where'd the top of the bell tower go? Fascinating. All these things, by the way, are supposed to have been built after the fire. I want you to just look at that and chew on that for a minute. Yeah. This was supposed to have been built after the fire. You gotta be kidding me, right? Look at this. Look, look. Yeah. Built after the fire. Not a chance. Carnegie Library. Detail on that. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at that. Oh, well, what's this here? Gee, would you build arches like this and then fill them in? Was that just supposed to be decorative? I mean, oh God, Tartarian 101. That is supposed to be one of his models. But we know about architectural drawings and models during this time. They're not architectural plans, they're just drawings, and they're not a model that was used to present the project. It was a model that was made after the fact when they were trying to scam everybody. The Florida Life building, the building in question. So this was the Love McGinnis home that's now a law office, but look at that front porch and look at that. Look at that. Would you look at that? Oh man, how fabulous is that? Whew. Lordy Lord. Look at all this detail up here. Look at. Oh. Man, that's some pretty ornate terracotta work. Sure, he built it. Uh-huh. And all that window detail. He did that too. All those cymatic resonators. Yeah, sure he did. Yeah, no. Yeah, he's supposed to have built this. This, I believe, was the Catholic woman's something. Catholic Christian Women's Association something. This is gone, I believe. Just like all those magnificent old schools and orphanages and mental hospitals, part of the reset conditioning. So what do you think? Do you think that some punk 28-year-old hustled his way down a month after a massive fire, the largest fire to date in the Southeast, the third largest fire in the country's history, and within a month was already designing unbelievable buildings and is attributed with rebuilding the city? This is the sculpture that got him in trouble. One of the sculptures, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back, apparently. Do you think that he built all that stuff? Just like Wright and Sullivan built all that stuff, and Fisher rebuilt Seattle, and Richardson built the Capitol in Nashville and the Parthenon and all those guys? Or do you think that there was some kind of payoff arrangement? I'll let you decide. But here we go. Formerly Springfield Park, now Klutho Park, part of downtown. No, he didn't build that, but he's supposed to have built that. There's a front shot of what was the Love McGinnis house. Now you see it's Pinkston and Pinkston Law Office. There we go. All that detail. Look at that, man, those windows. I love those windows. Look at all that detail. They loved his terracotta and then they hated him for it. Look at that front porch. Holy cow. Holy cow. That's the Morocco building. That's still there. That was the one that was, the Shriners were in there for 76 years and now it's offices. Look at this. Look at this. Look. Look. Oh. Can you say Masonic symbolism? And look, this is like hieroglyphs right here. Yeah. Another shot. Look at that. See how like the front is like a sphinx with sphinxes on it. More ridiculousness. This apparently is some of his plans. He didn't build that hotel there. There are a couple things on here that he built. St. James Building. I don't think he built the courthouse in Ocala, but I could be wrong. Did he build anything? Who knows? Who knows? Some pipe dreams. I don't know if he built these things or not. I just thought that was funny. Egotistical fool. Funny, all these guys were just, there's the Florida Life building. Yep, that's the one that's, they're trying to figure out, the city's trying to figure out what they're going to do with it. That's the one that you saw was all tore up inside. Come on now. Look at all this. Police department. He had to build a new police department because the old one burned down. Look at these windows. Look at these arches. Look. I think one little 30-year-old punk was capable of all this stuff. He didn't even finish architecture school. He didn't even finish. He saw an opportunity to jet and he jetted. So this is the bandshell that he designed during the project in what was Springfield Park at the time, Hogan Creek Park. And of course, now it's called Klutho Park, but that's another one of his designs, isn't that? So we are to believe, but look at that staircase. Beautiful. And I've never seen a prairie bandshell, but that one sure is. That's the Seminole apartment building. Little detail there. Seminole. You saw my video a bit ago on the Dade pyramids. I had a lot to say about the Seminoles. It's a detail from the Morocco building. Just look at that. Man, oh man. You know, I think, well, this was already here. The building was already here. And I think this crap was added to something that was already there. But hey, I don't know. No one can prove anything because just a couple weeks after his death, everything was gone. Ain't that just a coinky-dink? It's a good way to cover up a crime, you know, since he didn't really build any of this. Well, he might have built a couple things. He could have built the gazebo. He certainly didn't build these big buildings. But if they trash or mysteriously lose all of the architectural plans and legal documents, then no one can question anything. So this was the St. James building when it was a department store. And when it was remodeled to be City Hall, they got rid of all of this stuff. Look at all the plasma collectors on the top of there. Can you see? You see all those plasma collectors? Yeah, it's a department store. Yeah, right. And there it is now. So they took down the plasma collectors. Before and after. More of the houses he built. Seminole Hotel, I showed you a close-up of the bust, the Seminole head. And one of the apartment buildings he built. So there is, I think it is the Seminole, actually. It's gone through some reconstruction and redesign and reclaiming by people with money. And just like Frank Lloyd Wright would design furniture for the people who bought his houses, these people that are leasing these units at the Seminole have collected prairie style furniture, right? Wrightish things, clean prairie style furniture to, and even the curtains, right? To sell them as retro, you know how all that stuff goes. 1,000 years ago, when I lived in California and was working in catering, one of my many catering jobs was for the business department at Stanford University. And so I got the opportunity to wear a tuxedo and serve hoity-toity people with lots of money and that type of thing. And there was a Frank Lloyd Wright property. It's still there on the Stanford campus. It was built for then Stanford president who became president of the United States, J. Edgar Hoover. And then there was another, no, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. The president lives in the Hoover House, but Frank Lloyd Wright didn't design that. Frank Lloyd Wright designed a house for the president at the time who was named Hannah, and it's called Hannah House. And it was after he designed the property in Tokyo. And so it was designed around a magnificent tree, all Japanese and local stone. But everything in the house, all the furniture, Frank Lloyd Wright designed, and every piece, every stone, every doorknob, everything was historical registry. And it was a great honor to be asked to work in Hannah House. First of all, because it was a very elite place that the Stanford University used to impress or thank the big donors. But it was also nerve-wracking because you're walking around with crystal and trays and hot food, and you couldn't dent or chip or break anything. Anyway, I went off on a tangent there. Anyway, I think we're at the end of the slides. And so I just ask you, do you think that a 28-year-old who didn't even finish architecture school could have built all this? Or think that he is just one of many of these selected shills who are part of the narrative. Isn't that a nice YMCA? That's the nicest YMCA I've ever seen. So I'm going to let you think about that yourself. And I need to give a big shout out to Michelle Gibson and her channel. If you're interested in this type of stuff, the master architects of the reconstruction of various places, definitely check out her channel. She has more than one extensive, detailed video about that. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for buying me cups of coffee. And I'm gonna let you go now and see you next time. This is Joyce at Medusa Was Framed saying aloha.